Let's rock.
Identifying enemies can take time, as you learn different uniform combinations. A good way to tell if a player is a Southern or Northern soldier is if they are sprinting with two hands on the weapons, they are a Southern soldier. If you happen to see somebody sprinting in the distance with one hand on their weapon, they are a Northern soldier. Another key thing to know is that the game uses client-side hit detection, which is just a fancy way of saying that the shots that register on your screen are the shots that the server typically registers, regardless of latency or ping. While shooting, it is a very useful thing to know how to steady or brace your weapon against cover. Trying to aim can be a real pain in the butt, with your sight picture just wobbling all over your screen. If you can help it, always try to brace your weapon against cover. A braced weapon will greatly reduce weapon sway. You can even try leaning in order to brace your weapon to give yourself the advantage in some pretty unique situations. Another interesting thing, depending on the settings that you have configured, is that you can actually zoom in with the weapon without looking down the sights by pressing the shift key and remaining still. This will enable you to zoom pretty far down and identify things that you may not have been able to identify normally. If you were to do it on a mounted weapon, I also think that it opens up the sight picture, and firing it by zooming instead of aiming down the sights will give yourself the significant advantage when trying to target enemies. If you are looking down the sights and press the left shift key, you will actually hold your breath by default. This will enable you to steady your weapon very quickly and have an accurate shot for a short duration. This is extremely useful for engaging enemies at a long distance. If you hold your breath for too long, it will make your sight picture wobble uncontrollably for a short duration. Suppression is extremely powerful in this game. Getting shots on a person first can be the difference of life and death. If you happen to engage somebody from the hip, always remember that you can aim down sights while continuously firing. This will give yourself the advantage of suppressing somebody and also enable you to follow on with accurate kill shots if needed. There are some weapons in this game where the sight picture is absolutely terrible. You can fix some of these sight pictures by changing your 0 while aiming down the sights and using your mouse scroll wheel to max it out. This can open up the sights, but you will have to adjust where you fire and where you put your shots on the enemy. One trick with the AK is if you max out the 0, you can actually aim at the top of the ring. Another good weapon with a fantastic example of opening up the sights is the Thompson. If you happen to max out the sights on the Thompson, instead of shooting through, you can actually shoot over and on the top and have a better field of view. Other weapons may have collapsible stocks, where if you play with the stock collapsed, your shots will typically go to the left of your sights. I think it is best that if you play with a weapon that has a collapsible stock, that you practice fighting with that weapon with the stock collapsed. That way you can benefit from the faster ADS. Vaulting is pretty simple. Press spacebar to vault over an object. It is good to know though, if you happen to hold spacebar, you will actually climb on top of the object. This can enable you to get into some pretty unique spots if you manage to try to climb up on top of some objects on certain maps. While playing the North, it is possible to hide from the Recon plane and not appear on the enemy Recon report. If you remain crouched, you will see bushes appear on the lower left and right corner of your screen. This means you are hidden from the enemy Recon report. You can also remain hidden by crawling. In simple terms, the max effective range of the PAVN artillery could range and kill people up to 70 meters, while the maximum range for the NLF army can range and kill up to people at 90 meters. If friendly fire support is being called in, it should appear on your tactical view. This way, you'll be able to identify how close you can get to the fire support, generally speaking, without getting team killed. The Southern artillery will generally also kill up to 70 meters, minus the ARVN mortars. Those are garbage. It's also important to know that napalm is not random, and it is dictated by the map and the mark of the location that you call fire support on. Bottom line, if you call napalm on one mark, it will always come in at the same angle. The spooky can also kill all the way out to 50 meters. It will also penetrate through anything in the game except water. Lastly, the fire support for the Cranberry bombers is all the way up to 130 meters. It's important to note that the Cranberry bombers are the only fire support in the game that can be directed. It's best to use the Cranberry bombers against the longest width or height on the map so that you get the most effectiveness from the Cranberry bombers. I know they're not called Cranberry bombers, but they turn the enemy team into cranberries if you call it incorrectly. You can control the direction of the bombers by clicking and dragging on the mark you're trying to select and then calling the bombing run.
Magpie 9-2.
One thing that you constantly run into and be yelled at multiple times is about whether you should fight for lockdown or not. Achieving lockdown is essentially the defenders were able to stop the attackers from taking the objective. However, in many scenarios there will be two objectives and both of them are recapturable. In this situation, you will likely have somebody arguing which objective you guys should be fighting over in order to achieve lockdown. So let's say in this scenario, the defenders on Hill 937 are about to achieve a lockdown victory from successfully defending Bravo. Earlier in the game, they lost Alpha to the initial rush. However, they had some people continue to fight over Alpha instead of focusing on Bravo, and those teammates were successful in recapturing Alpha. In this situation, in order to break the lockdown, the attackers would need to take either of the objectives. So, in short, if the attackers are able to take a single objective, it will break the lockdown counter. This will prevent the defense from achieving a lockdown victory. In some situations, if a team overcommits to getting a lockdown, they may not have enough tickets to fight over the rest of the objectives remaining on the map. This can work both ways. If the attackers are dominating the defenders and are able to break the lockdown, it's likely that they will take the rest of the map. However, if you're playing campaign, in some situations, if the defenders are destroying the attackers, you want the attackers to take an objective. The more tickets you take, the more combat power that they will lose attacking that province on the campaign map. Lockdown can be very complex. It can both benefit attackers or defenders. In many situations, players may not understand why they are trying to give up objectives or why they're being yelled at for recapturing objectives. At the end of the day, no matter what you decide to do, just understand that it is a team game, and that whatever your team decides to do, it's best to be a supporting actor and support whoever the shot caller is. Another cool thing that you might not know that you're able to do is that if you have your map pulled up, you can still move, run around, lay down, crouch, and vault over things. You won't be able to fire your weapon, but you can still move with your map out. This is pretty important if you go to check your map and you receive fire and you just want to lay down because you don't want to die. If your mind was already blown by trying to understand how lockdown works, I'm about to try to teach you how Ho Chi Minh Trail works on the campaign. Every 3 turns, the North will get the ability to use the Ho Chi Minh Trail. You can only use the Ho Chi Minh Trail on the provinces that have an arrow touching it. Those provinces are indicated on the map with the red circles. If Ho Chi Minh Trail is activated, basically it means that you will lose 50% of the combat power that it would normally take to attack that province. A cool secondary thing that not many people know of is that in the early war, it also enables you to use and vote for PAVN. If the North successfully holds a territory where the Ho Chi Minh Trail can be used, it can also attack adjacent or the pink circle territories with PAVN. Under the right circumstances, a North team can be attacking Saigon Turn 2 of a brand new campaign in the early war as PAVN. That can be a huge boost for the North if the North team is superior over the South team currently fighting on the campaign. PAVN can also give you the edge in some urban maps early war. Generally, the NLF is all around better than the PAVN, but there are some circumstances early war that you would likely want to use them, and you can definitely use them if you happen to know how to use Ho Chi Minh Trail.